Hi everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be focusing on some quiz study guide review. So we're going to do a couple questions from each section that we've done so far, and we do have a short quiz coming up, so hopefully this will help us get started with some of that review and put us in a good place to come into class and take that quiz when it's time. So starting off the first section here, if we remember back, I think we covered about 2 videos or so occupied this, talking about corresponding angles, alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, all of those types of things. So what I'm going to go through and do here before I even touch any of these questions is to go through actually for all of them. And in purple, I'm going to highlight the interior of each line. And in a different color, we'll go through and we can highlight the exterior. That way, before we start, we kind of have a guide to kind of take us through. So again, anything in purple is the interior, and let's do, I don't know, let's go with brown. Any angles that are brown are exterior. So I always like to do that to start off. That way we have a pretty clear idea of inside versus outside. Another thing that we can do is in red, let's just highlight our transversal. So remember, transversal is the thing that crosses 2 lines. So there's our transversal, 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 transversal. So based off of this information, we're in good shape to be able to go through and evaluate which of these 2 angles, where they are, where they belong, and things like that. All right, so taking a look at question number 1 with X and Y, what we're seeing here. So these angles are not both on the interior, they're not both on the exterior. So that tells us that we're probably going to be looking at, basically through process of elimination, corresponding angles. Another way to see this is that if we were to take this whole angle diagram and transpose or put it on top of this whole angle diagram, angle X and angle Y are in the same position. So if we labeled it like 1, 2, 3, and 4, if we labeled this one 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'd see that they're both in the same position there. So we're going to call these ones corresponding angles. All right, so use that information. Hopefully that'll help you answer 2, 3, and 4 to classify basically what types of angles these are. And again, color coding, annotating, marking things off is going to put you in a good position to be successful. All right, so going on to our next set. Again, let's do some color coding. I'm not going to answer these ones. Again, it's the same idea as before, but let's highlight that transversal in red. Again, transversal crosses 2 other lines in purple. We'll highlight our interior angles. And then in brown, again, we'll highlight exterior angles. One thing that I do want to mention here is the difference between alternate and consecutive. So consecutive means that we are on the same side of the transversal, so we're either on the right side or the left side. So we'll label it here like this would be the right side, and this would be the left side. Alternate would mean that you have one on the left and one on the right. So we'll do one example of those. So for example, question number 3, look at angle 2 and angle 7. They're both exterior, so we like that. And then the second thing is they're alternate because they're on different sides of the transversal. So we also like alternate. So again, another differentiating example for you there. So hopefully that helps with the vocab. Honestly, for this, just do a couple of practice questions, but use your notes and you'll be in pretty good shape. All right, so a couple final examples here to go through and solve. So to start putting these together in a way that helps us to analyze with actually solving for some values here. So let's go for what they give us here. So they're telling us that angle 9 equals 80 degrees, and they're telling us that angle 5 equals 68 degrees. So honestly, at this point, we have enough information to fill in most of the diagram, but they're going to ask us one by one, so it's our job to go through one by one. So question A, angle 12, let's highlight it. Now, if we look at angle 9 and angle 12, what we're going to see here is that these are actually a linear pair. So because they're a linear pair, they share the same line, we know that it's going to be supplementary. So measure of angle 9 plus the measure of angle 12, because it's supplementary, is 180 degrees. Angle 9 equals 80 degrees. We don't know the measure of angle 12, so we'll call that x. And then we'll see that our total again is still 180. So we can go through and solve and see that this is 100 degrees. So the measure of angle 12 equals 100 degrees. All right, so that's an example for solving one there for A. Let's maybe try a slightly more challenging one. So we see that we have some parallel lines here. That's what our symbols here mean. So with parallel lines, we can take a look at maybe angle number 1 for part B. So looking at, again, like we were doing before, let's highlight our transversal in red. We have a transversal here crossing at 2 points. If we look at angle number 9, and our second one we're looking at here is angle number 1. Well, 9 and 1, we're going to see that these are corresponding angles. So by our corresponding angles, our postulate, we're going to be able to say that they're the same measure. So it's going to equal the measure of angle 9, and we know that angle 9 equals 80 degrees. So here we're going to use that vocabulary that we were just using to identify, and we're going to use that vocabulary here to solve. So it's your job to go through now and with both of these, take the angle measures that you're given, use those either linear pair vocab from our first video or keep it going. So you might have vertical angles, again, equal measure there from previous videos, or we can use some corresponding, some alternate interior and exterior, consecutive interior, exterior theorems. And those theorems are going to help us to be able to identify the angle values for each of these. All right, so a couple final examples here. We're going to do a setup for number 7, but not finish solving it. Hopefully this will help you with the start on the study guide here. So again, we're seeing with these marks that we have some parallel lines, and we actually have 2 transversals here. So this line crosses in 2 spots. Again, it crosses right here and right here. If we were to extend it, and then we're going to see, actually I should say ray, this ray also crosses in 2 spots. So we have 2 transversals. So 2 different transversals are going to give us kind of 2 different sets of things to work with. Before we even get there though, we're going to see that this line right here, again, if angles lie in a line, they add up to 180 degrees. So everything here has to add up to 180 degrees. So that's going to help us to get started. We're going to see that those 3 angles equal 180. So 2x plus 90 plus 1x. So now it's our job, put some like terms together, and we can go through and continue to solve for x. So your first job is to get x equals based off of that. And then once you do that, we'll be able to use things like, and I'll highlight this, we're going to see here, I'll do it in purple, 2y and x. These are alternate because they're on different sides of the transversal interior angles. So use your alternate interior angles theorem to see the relationship between x and 2y, and then you'll be able to use 2y and z to come together to get all 3 variables. So to finish this question, to be clear, we should have y equals and z equals, again, using our angles and our theorems. All right, final question to look at and talk through before you have the opportunity to submit these and do some final studying. So 2 sets of parallel lines. So this means that they're parallel, and this means that this set is also parallel. And this is going to, again, help us out. So let's highlight our transversal. That's going to help us to get started. So basically all of these lines are transversals because we're seeing that they're intersecting in 2 different spaces. So we could highlight everything. But the idea is if we're looking at something like this, so 4z plus 6 and x, we're going to say that, so I'll call this like 1 and 2. If we look at these, we're going to have to do a little bit of work before we identify, but we're going to be able to use our theorems to go through and solve. So for example, because we have vertical angles here, we could say that like x and angle 3 are vertical. So we could also say that angle 3 is equal to x. So using our consecutive, because they're on the same side, consecutive interior angles theorem, we would say that like 4z plus 6 plus x equals 180. And again, this is by the consecutive interior angles theorem. And then we'd be able to go through and continue to do something similar. So to solve for our y value and to solve for the x that we'd actually be plugging in right here. So when we're done with this question, I'm going to leave this one a little bit more open-ended. That way we have an opportunity to kind of think critically about it. We'll have x equals, we'll have y equals, and we'll also have z equals. So a little bit more work for this one, a little bit more thinking. Quite a few theorems that we're going to be applying to be able to go through because we have multiple transversals. But again, the idea remains the same. Use those definitions and values to go through and algebraically solve some of these challenging questions. All right, so as always, any questions, let me know. Good luck on that test and study hard. It'll definitely help you out. A lot of these questions, I'll say the last two that we just did, are actually harder than what you're going to see on the quiz that's coming up. So don't stress too much, but give it a good try and you'll be in good shape for the assessment. All right, thanks for listening, everybody.